Hello, everybody. Welcome to the official podcast of the number one source for information on the Boston Red Sox farm system on the web. This is the SoxProspects.com podcast. This is episode number 135. My name is Chris Hatfield. I am the executive editor of SoxProspects.com, coming to you from the still unseasonably cold Sox Prospects Mid-Atlantic offices here in our nation's capital. And joining me, as always, from the... Well, I guess I can't really complain because it snowed up there earlier this week, apparently. But joining me, as always, is the chocolate-hating Sox Prospects Director of Scouting, Ian Kundle. Ian, what's going on, buddy?
It's cold.
Yeah.
I don't like it.
Yeah,
I want it to be spring, and it's in the 50s.
Yeah, my wife, who's originally from Florida, is not letting me hear the end of it. It's, not good. Not good right now. But I'm sucking it up. I have the window open right now for the cat behind me. So if y'all hear a meow or a freak out, that's liable to happen at some point in the next episode or two, which brings me to my first point of information. Today we are recording this on April the 21st. It has been nearly 2 months since our last episode. I'm not going to
hashtag blame
that.
Hatfield.
And blame Hatfield is actually exactly right, as much as Ian's being a wisenheimer. I was about to say, well, whatever. Fact of the matter is, again, it's still kind of an off-field thing that don't have a lot of time lately. It will be resolved in the next couple of months, at least, if not sooner, hopefully, one way or another. Thank you for bearing with us. I appreciate it. What we are deciding to do today is we are going to record 2 episodes of the podcast today. We're going to record one kind of normalish episode and one spring training trip, scouting spectacular episode from our spring training trip to Fort Myers at the end of March. We have a lot of notes there. There's been a lot of content already on news.soxprospects.com, so make sure you go check that out. We've got even more coming. A lot of scouting notes on guys we saw down there, guys you want to hear about, guys you don't know you want to hear about. Lots of good stuff on there. You put, 3 or 4 up so far, Ian? 3?
5.
5. Oh, wow. I forgot.
Yeah.
I didn't realize because the thing is, so Ian sends these to me in big chunks, and then they get broken down into separate posts. So I know all the content that's up.
We're going deep on spring training this year because, frankly, there's not a lot of stuff going on up here with the minor league affiliates right now, both because of the weather and because of the teams. So, yeah.
I saw actually one really good tweet from a team that's not in the Red Sox system. I forget what system it's in, but they took a screenshot of the previous 4 days on their schedule, and they were like, "Oh, thank goodness, an off day," and they had been rained out their previous 4 days.
It's just been not ideal weather up here.
It's not good. But at any rate,
when I write these things, it just reminds me of being in Florida. So that's nice.
And that's a good thing. And that's a good thing.
It was born back then.
Don't tell my wife I said that, though. She's been trying to get me moved down there for forever now. But anyway.
Just don't.
Yeah, so we're going to have a separate episode that we're going to record today that we'll release in probably about a week, I think, of our spring training scouting notes. Today, in this episode, we're going to get to kind of our normal stuff. News, there's a lot to talk about. It's been, like I said, a couple months. So plenty of news in the system. We've got season opening rosters. We've got injuries, of course, the games that have been played. We've got plenty to talk about in terms of how guys are performing well, performing not so well, who's hot, who's not, type of a thing. And, of course, your emails, as always. We love getting your emails, and we want to talk about what you want to hear about. So send us your emails to podcast@soxprospects.com. Again, that's podcast@soxprospects.com. That's the easiest way to ensure that we will eventually get to your question. You can try tweeting at us, and I think we're going to get I think there was one Twitter question/comment that I wanted to mention on here today if we get time. So you can also, in theory, do that if you do not email. But, again, the email is the safest way to do it. Also, want to ask if you want to support the podcast. 2 ways you can do that. One is to subscribe, rate, and review. We're on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play Music. We post to YouTube. Subscribe so you know when a new episode is up. And if you give us a good rating, a 4 or 5 star rating, and a nice review, that'll help us get in some new ears. Also, you can support us on patreon.com/SoxProspects. Again, Patreon is Patreon. patreon.com/Sox Prospects. You can see the rewards on the site. You pledge a certain amount per episode, and based on that, you get certain perks. And as we do each show, we want to thank our $5 level contributors. That'd be Sox Signatures, Lendell Martin, Kirby Miller, Gerardo Iantosca, Kyle Costigan, Tyler Woodrow, Jeff Trainer, David Nardone, Tim Harding, Hurricanes 1, Bill Stanton, Deb Kendall, and Evan Kirkwood. And we'll give a special shout out to our newest patron, Brett, who became a $2 level patron this week. So thank you for that, Brett. Thanks to everyone we just named and to all of our patrons on patreon.com. I mentioned the emails, and make sure you follow us on Twitter. The site's main Twitter is @SoxProspects. A lot of good content going up there. Our new social media director, Gabriel, is killing it. So make sure you follow the site's account @SoxProspects. And actually, I usually don't pimp the Facebook because our Facebook page has been not great in the past, but Gabriel's been doing a lot of good stuff on there. So if you're one of the people like my wife who prefers to get their news on Facebook, you can search for Sox Prospects on Facebook. I don't know what the URL is off the top of my head, but he's been posting on there as well. You can follow me @SPChrisHatfield, and you can follow Ian @IanCundall. That's IANCUNDALL. And of course, I mentioned the news page at news.soxprospects.com. Ian, where you want to start, man? You want to start with news?
Sure.
All right. Well, top of the news, there's not a lot of great news to talk about, honestly, on the news front, especially at the top of the system. We kind of we'll talk about spring training, but it was kind of funny when we came back, looking back at who we saw, looking at what became our top 10. We basically barely saw any of them. We realized that part of that was because guys were hurt, and part of that was because guys were just not. We missed Brian Mata through a scheduling quirk. The top two guys in the system, consensus, everyone kind of agrees this, are Jake Groom and Michael Chavis. Some people coming out of the offseason had Chavis number one. I think that is a terribly misguided opinion, but people are entitled to their own opinion. Mm-hmm. At any rate, Jake Groom is injured. He is not pitching. We saw him pitch when we were down there. You can get that on the next episode. We'll talk plenty about what we saw out of Jake Groom and why we think he's easily the top prospect in the system right now.
And if you can't wait, there's also a write-up of his start.
That's true. That's true on the news page. Ian's notes from the field on Jake Groom. But unfortunately, near the end of spring training, suffered a mild flexor strain in his left forearm. He's supposed to be ready for an assignment to Greenville within a few weeks, was the report from Alex Spear of opening day. And I've also heard basically the expectation was by the end of April. So hopefully he's going to be pitching in Greenville soon. That said, Ian, obviously disappointing, another injury for Jay Groom.
Yeah, it's especially because it seems to be a similar injury to what ended his season last year, with something going on in his left elbow. So that's not ideal, but thankfully it seems like it's forearm. Sorry, not elbow, forearm. And thankfully it seems like it's mild. And as you said, if he's back pitching in 2 weeks, it's not the end of the world, because given how he only threw, I think, 60 innings last year combined, he wasn't going to throw more than probably like 100 this year. And so missing a month won't really impact that total.
Yeah, he only got 55 and a third 50, last year.
Yeah, so there was no way. At most, I could see him throwing 100 innings. So yeah, missing a month is fine. It's not going to hamper that reaching that target as long as he stays healthy the rest of the year. But he just seems to have these little nagging injuries that just keep coming back, and yeah, it's something that's going to be bearing watching, especially given his frame, because he's a big kid. 6'6", listed at 257 now. And his body definitely looks in better shape than it did last year, but it's something that, it's not the freest, most athletic delivery or body. So it's something that bears watching.
Yeah. And the thing is, I'll be more at ease when he's pitching, based on the fact that last year when he strained his lat and in his first start, we were told it was a minor 2 to 3 start thing. And then he didn't pitch again until June?
Yeah, he missed a few months.
Yeah, so that was not good. But obviously, being in much better shape, hopefully he will bounce back quicker. We mentioned Michael Chavis. Chavis was also injured in spring training. We didn't see him play. He strained his oblique in Major League spring training. He was going to start the year on the disabled list for the Portland Sea Dogs, and then news dropped right after the start of the year, actually the day after opening day, that he was going to be suspended for 80 games for I was hoping I would have this up somewhere. Michael Chavis, basically for a Cold War era steroid is what he got suspended for. Obviously less than ideal. Don't want to speculate too much. He released a statement denying any kind of intent to consume to use performance enhancing drugs. So the drug was dihydrochloromethyl testosterone, shortened to DHMCT. It's basically a Cold War era, East German drug that they used in their doping program. It's the same performance enhancer that Chris Colabello was suspended for using. And apparently, if you do research on it, it can be back in 2006, there was a New York Times article about this when Colabello was suspended for it because it was just really weird. And I guess it can be at that time in the article it said it could be found in at least one readily available off the counter performance enhancer, like a typical kind of GNC type stuff, and it easily could make its way unbeknownst to the user into a product. Myself, I don't know about you, I tend to assume, based on how often these guys are tested, that when they do test positive, it's a more infraction of lack of care than of an attempt to cheat the system, in my mind, just because, again, these guys are getting tested so often, you would be crazy to try and do this. So I always, and part of that is just me being an internal optimist, I guess, too. But just not a great situation for Chavis, who already has missed time every year due to injury. Missing 80 games this year. I don't think I ever said how long. He gets suspended for 80 games. He's not going to be back until, July, June. Less than ideal for a guy who could have used the at-bats this year.
Yeah, I think I don't know enough about the situation to comment really on anything more than just the impact of him missing the 80 games. But it's definitely a concern. I mean, he's someone who he needs in-game reps, especially defensively. And he's not going to, you can simulate all you want in taking fielding ground balls and everything, but it's still not the same as getting game reps at the position. There's more pressure in that. It's a less controlled environment. You don't know what's going to happen. So that's obviously concerning. In addition, he's a guy who needed to show something. This was a big year for him, I think, developmentally. He kind of broke out last year. He showed, the power. He hit 35 home runs combined between Salem, Portland, and the AFL. But still, I mean, after his promotion, he only hit 250 in Portland, and he struck out 56 times in 248 at bats. And there's still a lot of questions about him. Yes, there's upside, but right now we don't know what his long-term position is, and we don't know if he can make enough contact. And that's two pretty big question marks for someone who's already in Double-A. And to be missing another 80 games is just, it's a little disappointing. And hopefully, he'll come back, and we'll get to see what kind of adjustments he's made. He'll get some time to work on his swing, maybe fine tune a few things there, clean up his approach. And when he comes back, I guess it's kind of just a wait and see now. Hopefully he comes back healthy, and we'll see what happens.
One thing that I do want to kind of briefly address is that a lot of people are saying, well, his breakout season last year, he must have been on steroids.
Yeah. Don't do that. Don't be that guy.
Because here's the thing. Steroids don't help you put the bat on the ball. And power has never been a problem for Chavis.
No, we've told this story before, but we saw Michael Chavis take BP with a group that included Rafael Devers, Yohan Moncada, and who was the other person?
Those are the two big guys, but that team also included Longy, Dubon, Guerra.
There was one other dude who had power, though. I can't remember who it was. But anyway, and his power was his raw power was he hit bombs in BP. Like, he has always had power, and he's always been chiseled. You know, he's always had that short, stocky frame, but been very muscular since he signed. So don't be that guy. Yeah, that's no. He was always going to hit home runs. The question was he going to tap into that by making enough contact? And that's still a question when he comes back. So nothing's changed in that regards.
Yeah, that Greenville team, we had all the big guys. It was Longy, Dubone, Devers, Guerra, and Moncada, and Sheamus.
Yeah.
So that was, it was, they had 6 guys for 4 infield spots in the DH.
How far the system has come.
Yeah, we're not going to go there. Well, that team also had Kopech as well. That might be who you're thinking of in terms of a top guy.
Maybe. Yeah.
Anyway, so those are kind of the big news. What else is going well? No, we should probably mention briefly other injury notes to start the year. There are a few other players who are dinged up and not playing. We'll mention briefly one guy who is back. Josh Ockimey opened the year on the DL with a hamstring injury suffered at the end of spring training. He's back and hitting, and actually he's hit pretty well this week since coming off the DL. Also, Travis Lakins, right-hander who would be in Portland, starting the year on the DL. He's just still rehabbing from last season's elbow injury. So that's kind of the same injury. Little concerning that it's not there yet, but
yeah,
it is what it is.
Yeah.
Catcher Rodani Baldwin, who's on the Salem DL, he was hurt while we were down at spring training. He apparently has fractured bone in his thumb. He's going to be out for apparently a few more weeks. He is at least hitting down in extended spring training. He's DHing. Don't know if he's catching or not yet, but he's getting there. When we were down there, he was participating in drills in the morning, but then wasn't playing in the games at all. He had a removable cast that he was putting back on his thumb in the afternoon or whatever.
Yeah, and the drills he wasn't doing hitting drills. He was only doing
PFPs.
He was just catching the ball basically.
Yeah. He was basically putting the gear on
and
catching balls,
around.
throwing it. Yeah, it was weird.
Yeah.
Zach Schellinger, last year's 6th-round pick out of Seton Hall. He would be in Greenville, but he is suffering from some shoulder inflammation. We'll get into this a little bit more in the spring training scouting episode, but we basically got one report on him before we saw him pitch. And then when Ian and Chaz saw him pitch, it was a very different player. His velocity was down. The stuff was way down. And apparently he started the year rehabbing shoulder inflammation. So,
and he's another guy who suffered through major injuries last year. So
they were probably going to keep his innings down anyway. So it wouldn't surprise me if they were just kind of you know what, let's not mess with this.
I think he threw 4 innings all of last year.
Yeah, because he was sick. So Schellinger's hurt. Lorenzo Cedrola is in extended spring training. He's rehabbing from off-season ankle surgery. He is playing in games and playing in the field, so I can't imagine he'll be a much longer before he's
and I think he'll go to Greenville probably.
Yeah, he'll probably go to Greenville to start, I would guess, just to kind of get
into the swing of things.
We'll get into the lineups later. Both Greenville and Salem. Salem's outfield situation is a little more crowded.
Yeah,
they're rotating.
Greenville does have a center fielder already. So
Greenville's got a center fielder, and Salem really kind of doesn't. Chris Madera is getting the lion's share of the starts in center field in Salem, with Trenton Kemp getting the occasional start out there. And meanwhile, they've got Ryan Scott, Tyler Hill, Kyrie Washington, and Kemp rotating between the 2 corner and outfield spots. So it remains to be seen how they'll play that. Ian, who did I miss in terms of
Austin Maddox? Right shoulder strain.
Okay, yeah. So Maddox got hurt during Major League spring training. He's on the Major League DL.
Yeah, and then the other one was Marco Hernandez, who's still
sure.
Yeah, that's just the Major League guys.
No, that's true. That's true. Yeah. So Marco Hernandez, who's graduated, but
barely.
Barely. Yeah.
I think he graduated by 2 at bats or something.
Well, it was. So we usually make judgment calls, and we're just we don't want to have this guy ranked when he's going to be out for the entire season. Was basically what it came down to.
Well, he's not out for the year, but he's out for a while.
Well, no, last year he was.
Oh, yeah, true.
When we graduated him. But, yeah, he basically, I think that he was feeling pain in his surgically repaired shoulder when got it looked at, and they took the screws out.
I know that feeling.
Yeah. So
actually.
Yeah. Do you have any insight? then?
Well, I mean, I had torn labrum, torn rotator cuff, all that stuff. So I know the coming back from shoulder surgery is not easy.
Yeah.
Especially if you're, imagine playing baseball and it's not easy. So yeah, It's not surprising to see there were setbacks.
Yeah. So those are at least the minor league injuries. I mean, the major league injuries are pretty well documented. I don't think we really need to go into that.
Well, I guess one of them actually matters for minors. Now that I was thinking about it,
Bobby Poyner. Yeah. Well, we'll get to Poyner in a little bit. We can talk about the injury there because it matters to the other guy we're going to talk about there too. But Poyner is apparently going to be activated by the time people are listening to this. So
Major Leaguer Bobby Poyner,
man. I like it, but we'll talk about it then.
Exactly.
Okay. So that's injury. That's the injury update on that's not every injury, but those are kind of the big guys, why they're not with teams, things like that. Certainly a decent number of guys in the DL, but that happens. That's why, when we project rosters during the off season, they have more than 25 guys on them. And that is because inevitably there are always injuries. So there's no point in projecting 25-man rosters because you're effectively going to have a 26, 27, 28-man roster when you account for guys who start the year on the DL. And then when they come back, other guys are either really or not really hurt on the DL. So, yeah, it's kind of the circle of life in the minor leagues, I guess, is how I would refer to that. Maybe you kind of alluded to it, Ian. Let's get to the season opening rosters then, because we didn't really talk about that very much. There hasn't been very much movement yet, although I guess we've kind of had one, quote, promotion. That's not really a promotion. But at any rate, I guess we have to kind of start at the top, right? In spring training, the kind of only in-camp battles, once J.D. Martinez was signed and in camp, the only battles were for kind of the back of the bullpen and the last two spots on the bench between Brock Holt, Blake Swihart, and Devin Marrero. Where do you want to start, Ian? The bullpen? We've alluded to it. Might as well. Big surprise to me. Robbie Scott and Brandon Workman and Roenis Elias starting the year in the Pawtucket Red Sox bullpen in lieu of non-roster invitees Bobby Poyner and Marcus Walden. I would never in a million years have. I mean, the odds I would have given you on both of them making the opening day roster would have been astronomical. How did we get here, Ian?
They got outs and the other guys didn't. I mean,
dynamite analysis. Thanks for that.
No, I like it. I mean, they took the guys who they saw the most potential with, and I think they've kind of been rewarded thus far. Poyner, he had, I think, one bad outing where he was throwing long relief after, who was it? Was it David Price got hurt?
Maybe, but I don't even know if I would have called it bad.
I mean, he gave up all his runs in that outing, though.
Right.
He throws a ton of strikes. He gets strikeouts even though he throws like 90 miles an hour, and he doesn't walk anyone. And, he did in Portland, he did in Salem, and he forced his way into the picture, and they rewarded him because he's hard to square up. He gets a lot of deception. He gets the most out of what he has, and he knows how to pitch. And, that's all you can really ask for, especially when you're left-handed. That's all it really takes in this day and age. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, that's a really cool story for him, and probably would be more of a story if it wasn't for the Marcus Walden story, which is probably a little more off the radar, because Walden was someone I saw last year. And I liked him, but he was starting, and it was like, well, he's like a 30-year-old or 29-year-old minor league starter kind of guy who he throws hard. He throws in like the mid 90s, but other than that, it's just, I don't know. We just don't usually pay attention to these guys, probably not as much as we should, because there's just other guys that are more of a priority when we're seeing games, and especially in a rotation role. He only had really 1.5 pitches. He throws like fastball, cutter, and that was it. And so in a rotation, it was kind of, but now that he's moved to the bullpen, seems to kind of have found a home there, and he's pitching in that kind of like long relief piggyback role, and he's been pretty effective there. And I kind of like him in that role. And, I like what they did. They didn't just take guys based on, past considerations or anything. They did it merit based. And if he earned a spot, then that's good on him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's kind of funny. These two got lumped together when they both made the team. And I think it really is two different things. For everything Alex Cora said about not needing a lefty in the bullpen, which I don't think he was lying. I think he was telling the truth that they didn't necessarily have to have a lefty. I think when Robbie Scott was clearly not right in spring training, he got hit really hard. The stuff was down. He didn't have feel for what was it, his breaking ball.
Yeah.
He just wasn't able to spin it at all. It clearly something was off there. I think they looked at Poyner and said, hey, this guy's getting outs. I mean, it's kind of funny that Poyner and Walden were last year's Portland and Pawtucket pitchers of the year, or I guess it's the most valuable pitcher in Pawtucket.
Oh, really? That's funny. I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Well, Walden was there just because he was like the only guy who was there the whole year.
Well, exactly. It was by default.
He started as a bullpen arm, and then they needed a starter for a doubleheader, and then they kept needing a spot starter, so he kind of just stayed in the rotation and never left after that.
Well, no, he went back and forth is what happened. Yeah,
Because I saw him start. I never saw him pitch out of the bullpen last year.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was just a matter of kind of when you were there, frankly. I mean, if you look at his game log from 2017, if I could bring it up really quick here. Yeah, he starts in the he actually started in the rotation. He made 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 starts, went to the bullpen for 3 games, made 1 start, back to the bullpen for 2 games, made 3 starts, back to the bullpen for 1 game, starts, 2 games in the bullpen, 3 starts, 2 games in the bullpen, 1 start, 1, 2, 3 games in the bullpen, and then he came in the second inning on September the 2nd. I don't know if that would have been a rehab start by someone through the first inning, or whether whoever through the first inning got shelled. But, I mean, he bounced around. Even the past offseason in the Dominican, he pitched in 3 games. He started the first one, he came on in relief in the second one, and he started the third one. So he was extremely valuable as a guy who went back and forth between 2 roles, often on very little notice, and was extremely effective in both of them. And we heard last year that the Red Sox really liked what they saw out of Walden, and they went and re-signed him this offseason. They didn't re-sign every single one of their minor league free agents, so clearly they liked what they saw.
Yeah, and there were other teams who liked him during spring training too, and kind of talked him up a little bit to us. So.
Oh, well, I'm saying this was middle of the year last year. We heard they actually like what they're seeing out of this guy as a potential right-handed bullpen option.
Well, no, what I'm saying though is coming during spring training this year, he was someone who basically was like, keep an eye on him, just watch. But I never thought in the sense of when it was keep an eye on him, it wasn't like keep an eye, he might make the major league roster. I didn't see that coming. And
exactly.
As you know, as a guy who's bounced around and is 29? He's
29. He turns 30 in September. Good for him, man. That's out of Fresno City College. I'm going to assume that's a JUCO.
I'm just happy we actually did write him up at some point last year. So
that was helpful. But I mean, and then you look at Poyner. Poyner jumped straight over Pawtucket.
I mean, I get that though. With like a lefty reliever, you're not going to learn a lot.
Well, and the thing for me when Poyner, so Poyner's numbers in spring training were fantastic. I was a little skeptical at first because I remember the point at which people were really starting to talk about him as a guy who might make the major league bullpen. I was saying, look, he has not faced anybody twice this spring. Okay, so pretty much all of these guys are facing him for the first time. And he wasn't striking many guys out. It wasn't a big strikeout number for him. He was getting a lot of ground balls, but there were plenty of fly balls too. Maybe luck-wise he was doing well. I honestly didn't see enough of his outings to say, he's getting lucky on a consistent basis, but you always have to be careful when it's a lot of in-play outs. That said, the reason why, in the context that we were discussing that, especially on our forums at the website, you look at what happened with Ben Taylor last year. The Red Sox added Ben Taylor to the roster out of spring training, basically to get 17 innings out of him, I think, last year, and they weren't good. And then in the offseason, they wind up having to designate him for assignment, and they lose him on a waiver claim.
Yeah.
To me, that is a mismanagement of resources. But
I agree.
Here is why that is a mismanagement of resources. The problem is in the assessment that led them to believe he was major league ready when he was apparently not.
Yeah.
That's the problem. If you're going to use what you see in spring training, and everything that Alex Cora said squares with this spring, you cannot go by the results guys are getting,
Because spring training numbers mean nothing.
It could be ball and play luck. It could be the fact that the guys they're facing have never seen him before. It could be the fact that, any number of things are happening. Whereas a guy who's doing poorly in the spring, for example, could be pitching in front of really bad defenses for whatever reason when you've got minor leaguers in there or something like that, right? There's any number of things that have nothing to do with the pitcher that could go into the results. But if you're saying, look, Robbie Scott's stuff is down, Bobby Poyner's stuff looks like he can get major leaguers out right now. And you know what? Based on what we've seen in the major leagues this year, there is nothing to say that they were wrong about that. 7 innings, 8 hits, 1 walk, 8 strikeouts, 2 runs allowed, one of which I think you forgot, Ian. He allowed a solo home run in his debut as well.
Oh, right. Yeah.
But that said, they're getting 2 runs allowed in 7 innings out of a guy who's pitching middle innings. He's been one of their best relievers, full stop. Short of maybe Kimbrel, he's been good.
Kind of work, yeah.
They've already gotten more out of him than they got out of Ben Taylor last year.
Well, and this is the thing with a guy like Poyner. Poyner signed for $10K.
Yeah, senior sign out of Florida,
14th round pick. That's just really good scouting by their amateur guy. Who was it? Stephen Hargett. I'm definitely pronouncing that last name wrong, but he's their Florida local guy, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
And that's just good scouting. And I give credit also. I was just looking back on our player page. We actually have a write-up on him from 2016 in spring training where Chaz Fiorino says that Poyner is a strike thrower with a left-handed relief profile. Basically said, talking about, so back then it was someone who, he got a left-handed relief profile grade after a spring training look in 2016. So
yeah, man,
he's someone who kind of jumped as soon as he signed in the system and showed enough that he moved up really quickly, and now he's in the big leagues. And yeah, that's a very good pick for where they got him.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, between the two of those guys, I think I mentioned how they were different. I think I see Poyner as a guy who, honestly, if he keeps pitching like this, he's never going to pitch in the minor leagues again, save for the rehab assignment he's on right now.
Poyner has more staying power, I think.
Yeah. Walden has already been sent down once. He was the guy that went down, I think, when Eduardo Rodriguez came back.
I think he's going to get yo-yos this year.
Well, that's what's going to happen. I think with Walden, they were comfortable with him as the up and down guy, and I think that they are also potentially comfortable with losing him on a waiver claim if it came to it. This is a guy who's, like we said, he's 30. This isn't Ben Taylor, who they had drafted 2 years before, who they were adding to the 40-man roster, more than a year before he was eligible for the Rule 5 draft. I think Walden's in a very different situation.
I agree.
Walden has already been sent to Pawtucket and he was called back up when Poyner went on the DL, which is why I kind of said they were connected. But he was just sent back to Pawtucket when they activated Drew Pomerantz off the DL. And it's very interesting right now. We won't get too into this because it's kind of outside of our purview, but you have both Hector Velasquez and Brian Johnson in the Major League bullpen right now, which I like, frankly. I
like it a lot,
keep
too.
your best players up in the bullpen, man.
Yeah, but Hector Velasquez is a good pitcher, and Brian Johnson's been very good, I would say.
He also has to stay up, but...
Well, yeah, but I think that the way they're doing it helps because, you have those two as the bridges, and, if a starter gets knocked early, then you don't have to burn like 3 or 4 relievers getting, 4 or 5 outs. They can just come in and go 5 innings.
Right, but it's just interesting because Walden, when he goes back to Pawtucket, is going to be pitching as a starter. So he's basically doing the same thing he did last year. He went down to Pawtucket. He was going to make his first start. He got called back up before that happened. But right now in the Pawtucket rotation, one spot's being filled by Stephen Wright, who's on a rehab assignment. I presume.
And got hurt yesterday.
Oh, that's right. And he came out early. What happened to him again?
Back soreness, I think.
Back soreness. So, yeah. So he'll be Walden will be pitching in the starting rotation down there with Justin Haley, Jalen Beeks, William Cuevas, and Chandler Shepard. So,
but Walden's the perfect example of those like fringy 4A types, a little more than 4A types that you need, that every system needs for depth purposes. That you can bounce him up in between Pawtucket and Boston. He can start, he can relieve. You can have him pitch in relief one day for one team and then starts 4 days later for another. Like, that's the kind of depth player you need in every system.
Oh, sure.
And I think it's one that also gets underappreciated or kind of like disregarded. Like,
for
you can't have every position or spot can't be filled by a legit prospect because that's just not how the minor league, Major League Baseball operations work. You need guys like Walden.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And I mean, it's maybe a lesson for us, like when we go to games, don't put the notebook away just because, okay, I get it when it's, some guy from a national magazine who's looking for a guy, whether or not he's a top 100 prospect. Marcus Walden is not a top 100 guy, right? But when you're looking at it, either from our perspective, when we're going deep on the entire system, we need to pay attention to those guys in the late innings. Maybe we don't chart every pitch, but, just pay attention. Watch the guy pitch. Watch the number 8, number 9 hitter hit. Watch them field. These certainly major league scouts, that's what they do. They're watching every guy out there. They're not necessarily, ignoring a guy just because I tell them this guy's a non-prospect. So it's a good lesson for us. I mean, Robbie Scott was on the other end of that this year, but that was him once upon a time, the guy who was bouncing between starting and relief, and who came up and, made himself a major league reliever for an entire season last year. So, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out with those two guys in the major leagues, Walden going up and down, and Poyner, like I said, he keeps pitching like this, he's staying up. But, I look at the Red Sox bullpen and rotation right now. I guess you're probably sending Velasquez down once Poyner gets activated. Actually, maybe throw out everything I just said about Walden starting. Maybe Velasquez is the guy who's going to slide in the rotation. Just because I don't see who else goes down in that bullpen. I wouldn't cut bait on Heath Hembry quite yet, and no one else is going anywhere. So it would be interesting to keep track of. But anyway, we the other major league position battle that was solved at the end of spring training was there were 2 spots to go between 3 guys, and Brock Holt, Blake Swihart, and Devin Marrero. And you obviously all know how that ended with Devin Marrero being traded for cash to the Arizona Diamondbacks, where he has been on their major league roster, playing, not really hitting. And in fact, I don't know if you saw this, Ian got a home run taken away from him the other day.
I did, because didn't he passed Alex Avila,
on the bases. Yeah, he passed him.
That's a tough one.
I think they got him on replay too, was the worst part.
Oh,
that's wear it, man. But at any rate, the more prospecty kind of hook on this is Blake Swihart, and it's been interesting to see his usage or lack thereof to start the year. Swihart, arguably the best hitter on the team in spring training, or at least one of, certainly. It was a foregone conclusion by the end of camp that he had made the roster. The fit has been an issue.
Mm-hmm. Because it doesn't seem like they don't want to they don't want to use him at catcher, which is
weird. I mean, they don't want to use him at catcher, and I mean, so far I think they've only used him at first base and left field. You talk about how a guy is versatile. Playing him in left field and at first base is not necessarily speaking to versatility. It's speaking to the fact that they own the correct gloves, almost, it seems like.
Well, and it's like Sandy Leon has been terrible hitting. He's hitting 130, 130, 130. Like, he's not hitting at all. And Vasquez is hitting 224, 283, 265. Like, Swihart is a better hitter than both of them, except it just seems, as you said, they're not comfortable using him behind the plate, and it's just tough if that's the case to keep him up, but they have to. So I don't know what to do, because he's someone who I'd like to see him get every day at bats and be playing every day in the field behind the plate, but that's not possible because they can't set him down. And so they're kind of stuck, and I think they're trying to make the most out of a bad situation, but I'm just not sure, as you said, that this can continue for the entire year if they're carrying a guy who they've given, 12 at bats in 20 games or whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's not quite Chase D'Arnaud bad, but I mean, you look at it, we knew coming into the year that Cora was going to use his bench a lot more than say John Farrell did, and that's fine. But Swihart is advertised as a guy who can catch and play all 4 corners. Both infield corners and both outfield corners, and maybe a little bit of second base. But you just look at who else is on the roster. I just don't see. Catcher seems to be the easiest way to get him into the lineup. When you look at the fact that they've already got 4 outfielders for 3 spots because they want to play J.D. Martinez in the field, which, okay, fine. But if you look at the most plate appearances on the roster right now, Rafael Devers has the most plate appearances at third base. He's playing every day. He should be playing every day. Maybe using Swihart occasionally at third base would make some sense, but at the same time, I want Devers getting reps over there. The next three guys are Betts, Martinez, and Benintendi, all outfielders. And, when Jackie Bradley sits, that's because Martinez is in the lineup and not DHing. And then if you look at first base, you've got both Hanley Ramirez and Mitch Moreland, who are both tearing the cover off the ball. I'm not trying to take both of them out of a lineup on a given night. So it's just, it's really a logistical, it's like I don't know, you obviously haven't taken the LSAT, Ian, but anyone out there who's taken the LSAT, it's like a logic game from hell. It's just, how do you fit all these guys in there to get them at bats? I mean, Zue Lin came up when Bogarts got hurt, and he's already got more plate appearances than Swihart, who's been up all year.
I mean, the position is second base. That's where right now.
But they've got Nunez and Holt. It's kind of like,
but this is the thing.
Problem.
Eduardo Nunez is a terrible defender.
Yes, and he's not good.
And he doesn't add that much at the plate, in my opinion. I mean, he's hitting 250, like whatever. And then Brock Holt is Brock Holt. I mean, he's a bench player.
Nunez is hitting 250, but he's got a 308 on base and a 433 slugging. That's a useful player.
If you told me those were his numbers and you gave Blake Swihart those same at bats, I would say Blake Swihart would have similar numbers.
I don't know that based on what?
Confidence in the talent.
No, but what sample size do we have to say that
we don't have a sample size?
And that's the problem I have with everybody assumes because he was a top prospect, that's what he'll do.
But it's nothing to do about him being a top prospect. It's just the talent of the player and knowing how, when he's healthy, how he can hit. Mm-hmm. Like I've seen him hit in the minors. I know what his swing looks like when it's working. I know what he looks like when he's healthy. And when that guy is healthy, that's a potential, first division talent, especially if he's behind the plate. Not behind the plate, it's probably more of like a 50 player. Mm-hmm. But still, that's an everyday player profile, even at the plate. And he's just not getting that chance. So and it seems second base is really the only place, or it's middle infield, but he's not going to play shortstop, obviously.
Right. The thing is, he is completely redundant with Brock Holt right now. That's part of the problem.
Except Brock Holt plays shortstop, which gives Holt an advantage.
I mean, in theory,
stand at shortstop.
He can hold the glove and stand at shortstop. I don't want him playing short with any regularity. I'd rather see Lynn out there.
Lynn should be playing every day. I mean, I said this on Twitter when he's called up that I would hope he would play every day because I think Lynn's the better defender than both Nunez and Holt, and I think he will more than hold his own at the plate, and especially considering Brock Holt hasn't hit in about 2 years. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's the interesting time is going to be when Dustin Pedroia comes off the DL. What are they going to do? Because now you've got a starting second baseman, and in theory, your bench has Eduardo Nunez, Brock Holt, and Blake Swihart. Yeah, I mean, it can't actually.
No,
unless you also want to throw Sandy Leon in that equation and say three of those four.
Well, and the problem with that is with the catchers is Leon is Sale's personal catcher, right?
Not anymore, though. Sale's first start, he threw to Vasquez.
Oh, did he? Okay, never mind then. Then Leon is, if Swihart could catch, that would be the best role for him, would be the backup catcher, but they haven't wanted him to catch it. So.
Yeah, that's the part I don't get. That's the part of this I don't get, is that he's not catching.
It's just like, if Sandy Leon isn't the personal catcher of Chris Sale, like, you have to, if you don't trust Blake Swihart enough to catch 1 day a week, which is what Sandy Leon is basically doing, then I don't know.
Yeah, actually, Chris Sale has pitched to Vasquez in 2, 3. Actually, Chris Sale has thrown to Christian Vasquez every start this year.
Yeah. Okay. So then, who is Leon? So Leon has started 7 games, or he's played in 7 games. I don't think he has 7 starts. And so it's just, I don't know. It's going to be an interesting situation. I'm sure it's something we'll be talking about every time we record because it doesn't seem like it's going away anytime soon.
No. He's basically playing. Yeah, day games after night games. Well, let's see. He caught Porcello. He's Porcello's personal catcher right now, and he caught Velasquez one of his 2 starts.
Okay, so there you go. Yeah.
So that's exactly what it is. He's catching every, not 5th game because they went.
It's like every 4th game about.
Yeah, well, he started the 3rd game of the year, then started 5 games later, then Porcello, like the rotation got tweaked because of off days. So he went 4 games later, then he caught Velasquez, then he caught Porcello's next start.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't get the point. That seems to be the one place where Cora is not really doing well mixing in the bench, or at least not even seeming to try and mix in the bench, in that he's having Leon catch Porcello, and that's it.
Yeah, and the thing with Vasquez,
it seems lazy.
No, I wouldn't use that term. I would just say that it seems like they're confident with Vasquez back there, and if with Vasquez, you kind of just need to know that what he's doing right now is what he is. He's not a very good hitter. Like last year was the flukiest 290.
Right.
Like, he's not a 290 hitter. He's like a 230, 240 hitter. And so if you're and it seems, I mean, given his defense, minus, a couple weird things he does behind the plate that I don't really like, when he gets a little lazy on blocking balls and stuff and tries to show off the arm a little more. But other than that, he's a good defender behind the plate. And if you're comfortable with him hitting 230, that's fine. But with your backup, I would think you would want a little more than someone like Sandy Leon who's hitting 130 back there. But yeah, I don't know.
Well, I mean, it depends. Again, it's the amount of confidence you have in Swihart as a catcher.
Well, and obviously they don't have any, because has he appeared at catcher yet?
No.
Yeah,
I don't believe so.
And so he basically hasn't caught consistently in 3 years, 2 years,
something like that. Yeah, a couple of years, because there was the year he started the season,
which was 2015. He played he had 290 at bats.
Yeah. No, he had 309 plate appearances and hit 274, 319, 392.
Yeah.
And then the next year he entered the season as the starting catcher, and they pulled the plug after a week and a half.
Yeah. And then he got hurt.
We've got into that here, so let's move on.
Again. Yeah.
But just to answer the question, Swihart has not caught. He got 4 innings. He has caught 12 innings in 4 games. Oh, that's 2017. Last year he caught 12 innings in 4 games. This year he has played 4 innings at first base, 6 innings in left field, and that's it. He's played 10 innings in the field.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on before we say something.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it is what it is.
It is what it is.
We're on the record that they've mismanaged the Blake Swihart situation, dating back to the Charrington.
It's a tough situation now, though. But so we'll see what happens. We'll see if it changes. Hopefully, he gets some time behind the plate in the next couple of weeks.
Right. Rosters, Ian. Do we want to go team by team? How do you want to do this? Should we go just go down the system? Do we go up the system? Probably start at the top and go down.
Probably start at the top and go down. Yeah.
All right. Well, Pawtucket Red Sox. I mean, if you want to check out the current rosters, go to www.soxprospects.com/org.htm. It's like organization.
Yeah, that has we probably don't want to go through every single player.
We're not. Well, obviously we're not, yeah. I mean, starting with the Pawtucket Red Sox, the prospect highlights are really the only top 10 guy is Sam Travis at first base. We'll talk a little bit more about him in the spring training scouting bonanza. It's kind of a lot of 4A guys. The interesting one for me, Ian, is that Chad De La Guerra apparently beat out the signee from Mexico in the offseason, Esteban Quiros, for one of the starting infield spots. A decision that seems to be backfiring right now. That stands out to me, as does the fact that it's a pretty good bullpen down there with Brandon Workman, Robbie Scott, Roenis Elias, who I thought should have made the season opening roster, but I've been proven wrong on that. Ty Buttrey and Williams Jerez, as well as Kyle Martin, Ryan Brazier, who's a minor league free agent, and Josh Smith, who actually came up from Pawtucket, started the year on the DL in Portland, and he actually looked pretty good. I was watching him the other day. He's a sidearm guy from the left side. It's an interesting bullpen that's going to get Marcus Walden once he reports. And what are the highlights for you on that roster?
I think Travis is the obvious one. And I think on De La Guerra, I would have started back in Portland. He only had, I think, 200 at-bats total in Portland last year, or 196 at-bats. I don't know how many plate appearances. But he was someone who I thought could have used a little more time in Double-A. So as you said, I agree it's a little surprising that he started there. I think just in general, though, that I like the depth they have, especially in pitching-wise. I think they're better. They have more of those, they have more guys that I would be comfortable on the major league staff than past years, where, we've kind of talked about how they have trouble signing minor league free agents. And obviously this year, if you look, it's mostly homegrown guys in the rotation and the bullpen. But
they have to develop their own minor league free agents.
Exactly. I'd have no problem throwing Justin Haley, Jalen Beeks, Shepard, Workman, Scott, Elias, probably Martin, like Jerez, Butcher, like any of those guys I could see pitching in the bullpen or pitching, in the big leagues at some point this year if they needed a few innings. So that's good. I like the depth there in the lineup. Still, there's no outfield depth. If for some reason they need someone to come up and play outfield, I think they're just going to have to put Zuelin in the outfield because we've already talked about it. Resny Castillo's not coming up, and I just don't think Onery Tavares, Jeremy Barfield, or Ramon Flores. Granted, I've never seen Ramon Flores, but just looking at his profile, I don't think any of them are good enough to be on a major league roster right now for a considerable length of time if they needed them. So it's going to be interesting if something happens to one of Benintendi, Bradley, or Betts, what happens.
Well, I think what it is again, this is kind of what has happened in the past where the move is that JD Martinez becomes an everyday left fielder.
Yeah. And Zuelin stays on the roster as backup outfielder.
Zuelin is the backup outfielder.
And haven't they been playing Sam Travis?
They have been playing Sam Travis and left a little bit. I was just about to say that.
I like that because he's pretty athletic for a first baseman. And I know when he signed, I had a couple of scouts mention to me that they would have tried if they had drafted him, they were going to try him at third base. So he's someone who was kind of seen as having more athleticism than you'd expect for a normal first baseman. So if he can develop even to an average left fielder, that's definitely good for him and for the system as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I was just thinking it probably makes sense, Ian, for us to bake in our kind of start of the season reaction to when we go through the rosters. Kind of best hitters in the Pawtucket squad so far. I mean, Travis is off to a great start, hitting .386 with 1 home run, 3 doubles. Seems like that off-season mechanical tweak to his swing is paying off as he's hitting very well. Another guy who's hitting well is actually a guy who started the year in AA Portland but got moved up to Pawtucket in what seemed to be kind of a temporary role when Zuelin went up to the Major League roster when Xander Bogaerts went on the DL, but it looks like he's hitting his way into a full-time spot in Pawtucket, is Mike Olt. Speaking of minor league free agents, a guy who was a former top 100 prospect that never panned out. He, in 8 games in Pawtucket, 9 hits and 25 at-bats, 6 doubles and a home run. He's hitting the cover off the ball, 8 walks to 9 strikeouts in 8 games. He's been playing very well up there, too, so it looks like he's probably going to knock. I could see Chad De La Guerra, who we were just talking about going back down. He's only hitting 147. He has brought the OPS up to exactly 400. Not a great start for him. 14 strikeouts in 10 games, 34 at-bats. And Ivan De Jesus is not off to a good start either. He's got a 389 OPS, more than you would typically want to see out of a guy who you went and signed as a minor league free agent. The pitching's been pretty good. Across the board, a lot of sub-2 ERAs on this staff. Look at guys like Ryan Brazier. Is it Brazier? Maybe it is.
I think it's Brazier.
Brazier. Kind of like Frazier.
Yeah.
But Brazier. 9 2/3. No runs allowed, 11 strikeouts to 3 walks. I really don't know much about him, but we'll have to keep an eye on him. Kyle Martin also off to a good start. Jalen Beeks as a starter, he's gone 8 innings, 1.12 ERA, 16 strikeouts to 3 walks. So a good start to hit for the kind of top-ranked prospect on that staff. A lot of good stuff to like there, Ian, with these pitchers. Certainly, kind of what we would expect out of these guys. Anything stick out to you looking at the performance so far?
Not really. I mean, it's good to see Beeks off to a good start because it's still a question of whether he's a starter or reliever long term. But I actually think he could be really good in like kind of what they're doing with Velasquez or Brian Johnson right now. So, but it's nice with Beeks. I think the most surprising thing is he's missing a ton of bats. 16 strikeouts in 8 innings is big K percentage. And if that can hold, obviously he's not going to hold at that level, but if he's missing a lot of bats, he becomes a very interesting, especially if they move into the bullpen full time and he can miss bats like that. That's very interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting to me the fact that they gave Marcus Walden as long a look as they did as a starter. that they didn't do that with Beeks in spring training. You could take he was one in the first group of demotions. You could take it as either he didn't really impress, or you could take it as,
I think it's just they wanted to develop him as a start.
They wanted to give him the chance to start, and it was at the point in the spring training where the major league starters are going longer. So it'll be interesting to see if he's able to keep this up. I mean, right now those are great numbers from a guy who fell a little bit in our season opening rankings. All right, let's move on then to Portland, shall we? Portland Sea Dogs. Admittedly, kind of hard for me to get excited about this roster, especially before it had Josh Ockimey when he came off the DL this past week. Just not a lot of top-end guys there. Noteworthy things going on there. Trey Ball to the bullpen finally happened. Josh Tobias has been moved to third base full-time, it looks like, which is kind of interesting, given that he really wasn't a great defensive second baseman. So it's interesting to see how this move might take for him. But honestly, Mike Schwarin, by far the top prospect there and playing like it right now. But that's about it in terms of guys for me to get excited about beyond. I mean, it's Schwarin, Ockimey, and everybody else for me.
It's interesting to me, though, that Ball, yes, he's pitching in relief, but he's still thrown 11 innings or 10.2 innings in 5 games. So he's not really pitching in a true, 1-inning relief role, which is where I think he ultimately could be best suited for. So he's someone I'm interested to see, though, when I go up to Portland to see kind of what the stuff looks like out of the bullpen. You mentioned Schwarin is pitching well. Jay Kozar hasn't allowed a run yet, but anybody struck out. And he only walked 2 in 5, which is an improvement for him. So we'll see what's going on with him. And then in the lineup, as you said, alluded to, without Chavis and Ockimey, there's not a lot going on. Esteban Quiros, who we mentioned briefly earlier, has been killing the ball. He's probably been their best hitter, along with Cole Sturgeon, who I've always kind of liked just as the outfielder, because he's got a cannon. He's got a cannon. And
fields all 3 outfield positions.
Yeah, he's a good defender, and I think he can make contact and hold his own, and he's hitting off to a really good start at the plate, which is nice to see. And then I think the other one is Tate Matheny. He's someone who kind of he's a fringy type prospect because he doesn't do anything great, but maybe there's like a bench outfield profile, but he lacks power, lacks speed, but he does some things all right, and he's off to a good start, 342 with a 457 OBP, but again, no power, just one double.
A lot of ball and play luck, and he's only 1 for 4 on stolen base attempts.
Yeah. So well, he's not fast,
right?
And I guess the one other one would be Jeremy Rivera. If Jeremy Rivera can hit like 275, he's going to play in the big leagues. Because his glove is good, and so it's just interesting to me that he's actually holding his own thus far. Granted, it's 12 game sample, so that bears watching though, just because he can really pick it at shortstop. Oh, and I guess one other one, Danny Mars struggling. Yeah, that was the concerns we had. I think he's someone who dropped pretty in the preseason rankings, I want to say, or whatever start of season rankings, and it's just I just don't see the profile for him, and I could tell, we get comments on Twitter and I'm not trying to diss Danny Mars at all. He's definitely very athletic and he had a pretty good year last year, but it's kind of funny when our season opening rankings came out, I got one guy on Twitter who was furious, just absolutely furious that we had Danny Mars ranked so low. And keep in mind, we've got him ranked still. We didn't remove him from the rankings. He's ranked 49th right now. And the comment was like, the guy then tweeted at Mars in his reply to me that was like, or replied, I think probably to the site account, because that's where I'm tweeting from for the most part these days. But, just like, they did you dirty. Like, first of all, when we do these rankings, it's not personal. Yeah, it has nothing to do with
I would love to be wrong. I love being wrong on a guy that we rank too low.
Yeah.
I don't like being wrong in the sense that I want to make sure the process is right. But if the process is right, if I was just, believed in the process, was too low on a guy because of the process we use, then fine, that's going to happen. That's a good thing. When Daniel Nava happens and I'm like, guys, he's an indie ball guy. Those guys don't go on to become, multi-year career major leaguers who start for teams, et cetera, et cetera. I love being wrong about that. That's a good thing. I like seeing people succeed. I'm not trying to tear these guys down. I'm just trying to kind of set expectations. When we do this website, one of the things we have to do is tell you, hey, Danny Mars last year had, what did he hit? 304, but it was a pretty empty 304. It was, he's a left field only guy who only had a 750 OPS. He was right about where he was the year before in Salem.
It's just a tough profile.
It's a really tough profile. He's not particularly, it was, 12 stolen bases in 22 attempts. So he's not stealing a whole lot of bags. It's a really tough profile to succeed with. I'd love to see him do it, you know, but yeah, that's tough. And part of the thing too, I can kind of tell, like, before you talk to me about Danny Mars, go watch him hit. I have no idea why they let him keep the swing mechanics he has. It's the how he catches up to a fastball. I don't know. It's just he starts with the bat like on his shoulder. It's a weird swing mechanics.
But the thing is, if you can do that and you can hit, it's fine. It's all well and good. You know what I mean? It's just one of those. So I guess
they need a year where he doesn't hit. 290 or 300.
He's always hit well, or he's always made contact. So
right.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's Portland. Finally, burying the lead a little bit here, we get to the Salem Red Sox. To me, Ian, the highlight of the system, when we were kind of tracking the season opening rosters as they came in, is the Salem rotation. 5 guys all ranked in the top, I think 15 on the website
20?
right now. No, I think they're top 15.
Are they really? Wow.
Yeah, because Jake Thompson's the lowest ranked and he's 15th. In the rotation that features Brian Mata, Tanner Houck, Darwinzon Hernandez, Jake Thompson, and Roniel Raudes. That's actually in reverse order of the rotation, of course. But it's nice for me because I know that if Salem's in town, I definitely want to go because I'm going to want to see whichever starting pitcher is going. It's a loaded rotation. I can't remember the last time we had a rotation that deep, Ian.
Yeah, it's a good rotation. It's interesting.
It's a deep pitching staff, frankly.
Well, it's also one that if we're talking about season opening rosters, I was a little surprised with a few of the assignments.
Same.
Especially Houck, just because of how much they were changing based on the offseason. We've talked about it before, but they changed, the delivery. He added the new pitch. It's just a lot going on there.
Well, and Jake Thompson, based on the look we got, too, was another surprise.
Well, and Thompson's adding a new pitch, too. Thompson added a splitter, so it's just interesting that they were pretty aggressive. And in a vacuum, I would agree, because if people have listened for a long time, they'll know we've railed about how with college pitchers they should be aggressive. Right. You want them to start in high A, but there are certain caveats to that, and one of them is if you're changing a guy's delivery, I'd like to see him have some success and kind of show me a little before I push him like that, ultra aggressively. So I like the aggressiveness on the one hand, but in these situations, it's got me a little kind of waffly or it's a little interesting to me.
The devil's advocate, maybe, with those two guys, is it a situation where they've already got at least above average fastballs?
Yeah, they both are.
That alone is enough where they might, maybe pick up some bad habits in Greenville, leaning a little too much on the fastball. That maybe that's kind of the thinking.
Yeah, it's a fair point. But it's just interesting. So you got those guys, and then you've got, the 18, 19-year-old combos of Mata and Raudes. And then Darwinzon, who still is, only 21, I want to say?
He's still
22?
21. Yeah, he turns 22 in December. So he's 21 all year.
So, yeah, they've got it's an interesting staff, and it's not surprising to see Mata. Mata's not giving up hits, really, but he's walking away guys, which is out of character for him. But I wonder if the cold is an issue. He's never pitched. He didn't start the season last year in Greenville, so he's never pitched outside of the state of Florida before, before June. So my question, I wonder if the cold is impacting his control. And so,
that's a good point.
We'll see.
That's a good point with a lot of these guys.
That would apply to Darwinzon too, and even I guess Raudes was there last year, so not him, but
or even guys that go to Portland. Guys that go to Portland aren't used to pitching. They've had snow postponements.
Yeah, they had their whole first series was snowed out. I'm pretty sure.
I don't know if the whole series, but I know a lot of their early games were impacted by weather. That's for sure.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, it's a really interesting, and it even extends to the bullpen. guys like Johan Martinez is in our top 20. I would say he's the top relief only prospect in the system.
Top current reliever, I think, is what because you wrote about him on the news page from spring training, and I think I kind of tweaked. He's the top ranked relief player who is currently pitching out of the bullpen.
Yeah. But in terms of, relief only guys, it's saying the same thing. But then they've got like Algenis Martinez throws hard, Jared Oliver throws hard, Jordan Weems throws hard. They've got a lot of hard throwers. And then you also have like Daniel Gonzalez, who doesn't throw hard at all, but just gets outs because he's Daniel Gonzalez. And it's weird and doesn't make any sense because he's like 6'6" and throws 86, but he just spins a breaking ball and throw strikes. So he's been one of their better pitchers. And Matthew Gorse is like a solid, fastball cutter guy who's got a good college arm who, maybe he's like an Org guy, maybe has a chance of getting a call up at some point. It's a pretty interesting team, especially in the bullpen. And then that's not even getting to the lineup.
Yeah. If you look at the lineup, the highlight pretty obviously is Bobby Dahlbeck, coming off of a year where he was injured and struggled a little bit. Man, his numbers are intriguing this year.
They're the most. It's so Bobby Dahlbeck.
He's becoming basically a 3 true outcomes all-star,
which is what he is.
The line is 208, 381, 542 in 15 games, 48 at bats, which are 63 plate appearances. He has 10 hits. 8 of those are for extra bases, including 4 home runs. And this is in the Carolina League, where you don't hit 4 home runs in 15 games in the Carolina League.
Especially in April. This
is true. I'll look up what Chavis did in April last year in a second. But meanwhile, 11 walks and 22 strikeouts in 63 plate appearances.
Yeah, that's
not a sustainable line at all. In either direction.
His BABIP's low. It's only 270.
Because he's not hitting any balls in play. They're all either leaving the yard or he's striking out or walking. Yeah, he's got. Let's put it this way. He's put. Let's see. We can figure this out really quick. He's got 48 at bats. Okay, subtract the 22 strikeouts, so that gets you to what, 26? Subtract the 4 home runs. That's 22 balls in play. He's got as many strikeouts as balls in play that aren't home runs.
Yeah.
I mean, with Bobby Dahlbeck, completely unsustainable. But
no, it probably is. But if he can just get the strikeout rate under 30 is all. If he gets his strikeout rate under 30 and can hit like 230, he's going to hit like 30 home runs in the big leagues.
Yeah.
Yeah, both those things are huge question marks.
Yeah, he's not doing. It's kind of funny. He's had a great start to the year and is answering none of the questions we have about him.
He's doing exactly what I expected him to do, and it's just.
Yeah, so Salem in 2017, in April, Michael Chavis hit 5 home runs in 13 games.
Yeah. So it's about the same, but Dahlbeck's got 4.
Well, he also only struck out 9 times in 44 at bats.
Fair. But like Dahlbeck's he's a very un-Red Sox prospect.
He they
do not in
like
the Rangers system.
He's not a very Red Sox guy at all.
But in the sense that if he figures it out, man, the power is so real. Mm-hmm. Like his BP is insane.
His BP. It's kind of funny. We'll talk about this on this spring training podcast. But watching AAA BP versus watching A-ball BP. It's 2 different things.
Well, that was like when he was in Lowell, though. I've been going to Lowell since 2010, 2009. There were multiple years where I've never seen a Lowell player hit a home run in batting practice. For the entire year, not a single home run.
Yeah.
And then Bobby Dahlbeck shows up in BP when he signed that summer, and he just his first swing is just like a 390-foot home run in the left field, and he hits the one to right field, and it was just that was when it's first. That's when you could really see it because his short season, the comparison between his BP and everyone else's was absurd. Mm-hmm. And then he went out and hit 370 and did all that. But he's got a lot of talent, a lot of upside. It's just if he can just cut down the strikeouts, he just below 30%. The people strike out in the big leagues all the time these days. It's not a death sentence like it used to be.
Right.
But you have to make some contact. You got to make more than he is making right now. And so if he can just cut it down, 5%, and bring the average up, get it. If he could be like a 230 hitter, then watch out. But
yeah, I mean, the thing people don't realize is that if you are Adam Dunn in high A, that does not mean you are going to be Adam Dunn in the major leagues.
No.
It means you are going to strike out every at bat in the major leagues.
Yeah.
Adam Dunn
that's the thing,
in
when I say
high A had a very high batting average. I mean, probably, yeah. I mean, someone brought this up, but it's players like that is my point.
Yeah,
it's, the stats don't translate 1-to-1 from high A to the major leagues as you progress.
Yeah, Adam Dunn didn't play in high A, but in
oh, there you go.
In low A, he hit 307.
Yeah, it was a 409 on base percentage.
Yeah,
and he only struck out 60. Let's see. Well, in his first year as a 19-year-old in the Midwest League, he only struck out 64 times in 370 plate appearances.
Well, here's one. Joey Gallo played in the Carolina League in 2014. Mm-hmm. He hit 323, 463, 735.
Right.
Excuse me, right. with 21 home runs in 58 games. So, Dahlbeck's hitting home runs, but he's got to make more contact. That's the end of the story. And that's going to be what ultimately determines his future upside.
We didn't really talk about the Salem pitching staff, how they've done so far, Ian. It's actually been pretty disappointing, to be honest, after we've talked them up like we have. Tanner Houck has really struggled, 13 walks and 10 2/3. Ronio Raudes hasn't been that great, only 9 strikeouts, 7 walks and 13 innings. Even in the bullpen, Joan Martinez, 9 strikeouts to 7 walks and 7 1/3. Mata, 13 walks and 13 innings. It's Darwinzon Hernandez, 9 walks and 11 innings with 13 strikeouts. It's been kind of a struggle there. Interestingly, and this is a guy that we were talking about beforehand, I should ask about Daniel Gonzalez pitching in a piggyback role yet again. 5 games that he's appeared in, 15 innings, 24 strikeouts to 1 walk. How long does he have to do that before you care?
No. I mean, I mentioned it earlier. He throws 86. He's a nice, organizational piece, but he just doesn't have the stuff to profile in the upper minors, in my opinion. I could be wrong.
Did we see him in camp?
No. I saw him last year, though.
All right.
But, yeah, I mean, I keep an open mind. If I go down to Salem this year and I'll see him, or asking around, see what people say. But, yeah. I mean, he just doesn't have the stuff to be a big. How many big leaguers you see getting by who throw 86 to 87?
Mm-hmm. And it's still, again, it's telling that they are doing nothing to make sure he has a rotation spot.
Yeah, I mean, he throws. Yeah, it's 84, 86, high 60s curveball, low 70s maybe, and then a changeup. You need more stuff than that. But the thing is, he's got a big frame. He's got a lot of he gets some deception. He throws strikes. That can work in the low minors. So We'll see.
All right, let's move on to Greenville. The Greenville Drive. It's a very young team. It's a lot of guys who we don't know a lot about. I think is maybe how we would describe it, Ian. Prospect-wise, the highlights are last year's 2nd and 5th round picks in center fielder Cole Brannon and right-handed pitcher Alex Scherf. But there's been some other surprises. There's a lot of sleepers on this roster. In the lineup, you've got first baseman Pedro Castellanos, second baseman Kervin Suarez, shortstop Ever Luis Lozada. We should mention that C.J. Chatham is there, and we'll mention this on the spring training podcast as well, but wasn't throwing while we were down there. Started the year playing some shortstop, but he hasn't played shortstop in about a week. He's back to only DHing. Clearly something is up there with his arm, not throwing. So that's kind of interesting. Meanwhile, on the mound, some sleepers that we got some good reports on and that we saw that we really liked down in spring training. Jonathan Diaz was a guy we liked. Carter Crawford and Hunter Hayworth were 2 2017 draftees, late round draftees that we got pretty good reports on. You love Alex Duran, and Alex Scherf is in that rotation as well. It's an interesting pitching staff in the bullpen. You've got a Brendan Nail in there. You've got some other guys that are kind of interesting. It's a lineup that doesn't jump out at you, but it's a lineup that's got some guys who have potential to move, I think is maybe how I would classify it. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, it has some interesting guys. As you said, like Diaz and Crawford and Duran are interesting arms. Obviously, I'm not talking about like Scherfer, Brandon, the two like kind of high profile guys. And then in the lineup, you know, we've got some guys like Kervin Suarez, Ever Luis Lozada, who they made pretty big jumps. I think they're both inside the top 30 now. And it's just, you know, they're kind of raw, athletic, toolsy middle infielders. So, and if they figure it out, you know, there's some upside there. Similarly, like Castellanos has pretty big raw power. He's got off to a slow start, but I was watching a Greenville game a couple days ago and it's looked miserable. They're wearing like full like scuba suits to play these days, which shouldn't be happening in Greenville. So I'm again with him. As we mentioned with the Salem guys, I'm wondering how much the weather is impacting them. But yeah, it's you know, it's been a slow start. It seems they're really struggling as a team. But they do have some individuals that are pretty interesting. So we'll see what happens going forward.
Yeah, looking at how guys are performing, and I mean, I don't know how much of this we should talk about here, Ian, versus on the spring training podcast. And I know you know where I'm going with this, but one guy who has really struggled is Cole Brannon. He's hitting 193. He's taking walks like we knew he would. It's a, you know, isolated discipline of about 100. He's taken 7 walks, but 19 strikeouts in 14 games. A lot of Ks. He's kind of struggling there. He does have 5 steals. He's 5 for 5 in steal attempts, but really struggling. Kind of squares with what we saw in spring training, if we're being honest, and honestly squares with what some of our posters on the forum said they saw in like the Gulf Coast League last year after he signed. It's been interesting to see him because, I mean, again, I don't know whether we should save this for the spring training podcast, but it doesn't look like a second rounder to me yet, honestly.
Yeah, it's just it's a weird profile. He's not very big. You know, there's not a lot of, like, you could say he's plus speed, and maybe I didn't see him enough in center field to get a read on his defense, but supposedly he's got a decent glove out there. But at the plate, there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and he's got to get bigger physically. He needs to add a lot of strength. He really doesn't. He's just not big. He's probably like 160, 170 pounds right now, but I'm not sure how much projection there is either because he's about 6 foot. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with him. Yeah. And then I guess, sure, if we should mention too, like he's off to a slow start, which I'm not that surprised about based on what we saw in spring training. But he's going to be a work in progress. There's a lot of work that needs to be done with him. And yeah, so we'll see with him also.
Sorry, I was on mute. Scherf's got 9 walks, 7 strikeouts, 9 hits, and 9 1/3 on the mound so far. One guy who's been pitching really well is Cutter Crawford, drafted last year out of Florida Gulf Coast University, and yes, does throw a cutter. In 14 innings over 3 starts, he's got 21 strikeouts to 3 walks, has only allowed 11 hits. Really has kind of been the ace of that rotation so far.
Yeah, he was good in spring training too.
Yeah.
His brother was a former first-round pick, Jonathan Crawford, out of Florida.
Jonathan so with an O.
Yep,
with 2 O's.
He comes from a family with some baseball pedigree, and he's interesting to me. He's someone I'm definitely going to be keeping my eye on the entire year and going forward because I'm not sure he's a starter long-term, but could be interesting in a bullpen role. Or maybe, as I said, we'll see. I want to see him. I need to see him start before I can make a determination there, but at least the stuff looked like it could play in a bullpen role at some point.
For sure. All right. Well, that wraps up, I think, unless maybe we should mention briefly, so guys who were stuck behind in an extended spring training. I mean, it's kind of an interesting crew of guys. I'll probably talk more about them in the spring training episode that we're going to do next, but certainly an interesting number of guys. They've got enough guys there that they're fielding 2 lineups during extended spring training right now, 2 full lineups. So there's some guys there that I think we liked in spring training. One guy that kind of sticks out to me that I think that just probably really isn't room for in Greenville is shortstop Andre Cologne. They drafted him out of Puerto Rico in the 11th round last year and gave him $125,000. I saw him drive the ball a couple times, especially for his size. I mean, Cologne is only listed at 6 feet 180 on the spring training roster, so not a big guy, but He certainly looked like he was able to move pretty well out there at short, looked pretty good, and he drove a few balls in game action that I saw. So you kind of wonder maybe if they're planning on Chatham only having a short stay in Greenville and then moving up perhaps to Salem if he continues to hit, whether that might mean they call a guy like Cologne up to Greenville as opposed to starting him in Lowell. So I don't know if anybody else sticks out to you that's worth mentioning, Ian, in the extended spring training roster.
No, I mean, I think they're all got a lot of the guys or ones we'll talk about in the next episode, so I don't want to be too repetitive.
Got it. All right. Well, Ian, we have emails. I'm wondering if it makes sense to table them for the spring training episode based on how long this one has
I was
gone.
going to suggest that.
So let's do that. We want to thank all of you guys for listening again at Sox Prospects on Twitter. Emails to podcast@soxprospects.com. He's Ian at Ian Kundall. IANCUNDALL. I'm at SP Chris Hatfield. Keep an eye out for the next episode of the podcast that'll be coming soon. Thank you, everybody, for downloading, and have a great week.